The first time the silence breathed, it came from the trees. It was late autumn in St. Aurelie, a forgotten village tucked along the frozen veins of the Laurentian forest, where snow gathered before the first frost and never quite melted right. The air smelled of pine and ash, of old wood smoke curling from chimneys that hadn't known repair in decades. There were fewer than 60 people left now, mostly the old, the stubborn, and those with nowhere else to go. Amélie Renaud had returned only because her mother's voice had cracked on the phone when she said the word missing. "Children," her mother whispered. "They're gone again." The road into St. Aurelie wound through a corridor of skeletal birches that leaned toward each other like conspirators. The headlights of Amélie's car carved through the fog, revealing frost-caked branches and signs pockmarked with bullet holes. She hadn't been back in 15 years, not since her brother Luc had vanished without a trace one October night when the wind carried whispers that weren't wind at all. Now, driving through that same cold mist, she could almost hear it again, the faint rhythmic pulse that rose from the forest, like the earth itself was breathing in sleep. She told herself it was the wind. When she reached her mother's house, the lights were dim. The windows glowed orange from the fireplace, the same house that had stood at the edge of the woods since her great-grandfather had built it. The forest began just behind the fence, dense and dark, swallowing the last light of the day. Her mother, Jean, was thinner now, her gray hair tied back, her eyes restless. She didn't hug Amélie. She just looked past her shoulder, toward the trees. "You heard them too, didn't you?" Jean asked. Amélie hesitated. "I heard something." Jean's mouth twitched. "It's louder now. It comes every night, just after midnight. The air changes. You'll see." The way she said "see" instead of "hear" made Amélie's skin tighten. That night, after unpacking in her old room, she found herself standing at the window. The forest beyond was motionless, yet alive somehow. Her breath fogged the glass. The silence pressed against the house, heavy and waiting. Then she felt it, so soft it almost wasn't there. A slow inhale. Then an exhale. As if the darkness itself were breathing. She froze. Her rational mind whispered about wind, about shifting air pressure. But something inside her, a small, buried instinct that had been there since Luc disappeared, knew better. The silence wasn't empty. It was full. The next morning, she went into town. St. Aurelie looked the same, just older. The post office was now a boarded-up shack, and the general store had become half church, half meeting place. The people she saw were pale, wary, all moving as if they feared to make too much noise. At the edge of Main Street, she found the new sheriff, Paul Tremblay, a man with the look of someone who had seen too much winter. He stood beside his truck, arms crossed, staring at a cluster of hand-drawn posters tacked to a board. Each one bore a face. Children. 4 of them. They went missing over the last 3 weeks, he said when she approached. No signs of struggle. No tracks in the snow. Just gone. Amélie stared at the names. One of them she recognized, Émile, the grandson of her mother's neighbor. The boy had been only 8. "Do you have any leads?" she asked. Paul's jaw tightened. "We've searched every inch of the forest. Dogs can't follow any scent. They just stop. Sit down. Whimper. Like they're scared." He nodded. "Like they hear something we can't." There was something else on his face, something he wasn't saying. She could see it in the twitch of his fingers, the way he kept glancing at the tree line as if afraid it might move. When she left, she walked down the path toward the old river dock. The water was half frozen, mist curling over its surface like smoke. She remembered playing there with Luc when they were children. They used to skip stones and count how long before the sound faded into the woods. Luc used to say that if the silence took too long to come back, it meant something was listening. That afternoon, she stopped by the local church. It had been built in 1887, would darken to almost black. Father Roberge still presided there, though he was ancient now, his hands trembling as he lit candles that seemed to do little against the gloom. "You came back," he said, his voice cracked like dry bark. "My mother said the children are missing." He nodded slowly. "Saint Aurelie keeps its ghosts well fed." Amelie frowned. "What do you mean?" Father Roberge looked toward the altar. "Some things in these woods are older than our prayers. We've kept them quiet for generations. But silence can only hold so much before it starts to breathe." A shiver crawled through her. He turned toward her, eyes milky with age. "You remember your brother?" She stiffened. "Of course. He was the first in a long time. The forest remembers names. It always starts with the young. The pure." She wanted to ask more, but his face closed off. "Go home before dark, Amelie. Don't listen when it breathes. That's how it knows you're still here." The night fell early. The air froze so sharply it crackled. Inside her mother's house, the fire burned low, and Jean sat in her old armchair, clutching a rosary. She wasn't praying, just listening. Amelie made tea, trying to ignore the unease building in her chest. Then, at exactly 12:03, it came again. The breath. Long and deep, rolling through the forest and across the snow. Windows quivered, the floorboards trembled slightly. It wasn't loud, it was felt. Jean's lips moved soundlessly. "They're close tonight." Amelie's throat went dry. "Who?" "The children." "What children?" "The ones the silence took." Amelie's pulse stuttered. "You mean the missing kids?" Jean shook her head. "All of them. Even before. You think Luke is gone, but he never left. None of them ever leave. The silence keeps them. It needs them." The fire sputtered, throwing their shadows against the wall. Amelie's eyes darted to the window. Through the glass, she saw the faintest movement among the trees, something pale, like the edge of a nightgown, vanishing behind a trunk. Her breath hitched. She stepped closer, her reflection merging with the darkness outside. Then she saw them, tiny figures standing among the birches, motionless, their faces turned toward the house. Children. Dozens of them. Their eyes glowed faintly, like embers beneath frost. The silence inhaled again, and the glass between them pulsed, just once, like the breath of something vast. Amelie stumbled back from the window, her pulse racing, heart hammering so loud she thought the forest might hear it. The glass settled. The breathing faded. When she looked again, the birch trees stood empty, quiet and clean beneath the moonlight, as if nothing had ever moved there. Her mother was staring at the window too, but she didn't seem frightened. "You saw them, didn't you?" Jean murmured. Amelie swallowed. "I saw something. Kids. Or maybe they come when the silence breathes deep," Jean whispered. "Every night it pulls them closer. They don't belong to us anymore." Amelie's mind raced. "You can't mean they're real." "Those children, maybe I was just tired, or the light was strange." Jean's eyes were glassy. "You think you're too grown for the truth, just like your brother did." The mention of Luke made Amelie's stomach twist. "What truth, Maman?" "That they were never lost. They were taken." Her voice cracked on the last word, and she clutched the rosary so tightly the beads cut into her palm. That night, Amelie lay awake in her childhood bed, listening. The house creaked and settled, wind scraped the walls, but beneath it all there was something else. Not the breathing anymore, something quieter, closer. A faint whispering sound, like children mumbling prayers under their breath. When she closed her eyes, she saw them again, those pale shapes among the trees, faces blank, mouths moving soundlessly. By dawn she hadn't slept at all. The next morning, frost clung to every surface like dust from a forgotten age. Amelie walked down to the forest's edge, clutching her coat tighter around her. The air smelled wrong, wet and metallic, like rusted snow. She crouched by the fence and saw prints in the frost, small, barefoot, dozens of them. The footprints led into the woods, vanishing where the first shadow fell. Paul Tremblay's truck pulled up behind her. He got out slowly, coffee steaming in one hand, a rifle slung across his shoulder. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said. "I couldn't sleep," Amelie replied. "There are footprints." He walked over, looked down, and went still. The footprints were sharp, recent. "We've seen these before," he said finally. "Every morning after the silence. After the, whatever it is that moves through the trees. You heard it last night, didn't you?" Amelie hesitated, then nodded. "It feels like breathing." Paul's face hardened. "That's exactly what it feels like." He stepped across the fence, boots crunching softly. "We've tried tracking them. The prints go on for a few hundred meters, then just stop. No sign of struggle, no end to the trail. Like they walk into thin air." Amelie followed him into the woods. The birches grew denser, their trunks ghost-white and narrow, like 1,000 bones standing upright. She noticed marks carved into the bark, circles, lines, strange sigils burned into the wood. "Those weren't there when I was a kid," she said. Paul's voice dropped. "Locals started carving them last winter. Said it keeps the forest asleep." She frowned. "Does it work?" He didn't answer. As they moved deeper, the forest grew quieter. Not just the absence of birds or wind, an unnatural hush, thick and heavy. Even their footsteps seemed swallowed by it. Then, somewhere ahead, a faint sound, like someone exhaling through hollow wood. Paul raised a hand, motioning her to stop. The sound came again, low and rhythmic. He took one cautious step forward, and the snow at his feet shifted. Not from wind, but from underneath. He froze. The ground moved again, just slightly, like something breathing below the surface. Amelie whispered, "Paul." Before he could respond, the snow cracked open with a soft sigh. A hand, small, gray, and slick with frost, reached out. Amelie screamed, stumbling backward. Paul yanked his rifle up but didn't shoot. The hand flexed once, then withdrew. The snow sank flat again. Silence. For a long moment, they didn't move. Then Paul said softly, "That's where we found Emil's hat." They retreated, step by careful step, until the trees opened up again. Back by the fence, Paul wiped sweat from his forehead despite the cold. "You need to leave town, Amelie." "I can't. My mother, she's part of this," he interrupted. "Everyone who stayed too long is. They feed the silence, even if they don't mean to." Her stomach tightened. "What are you talking about?" He met her eyes, jaw trembling slightly. "The breathing. It's not just sound. It's hunger. It's what's left of something that was once worshipped here, before the church, before settlers. They called it le souffle noir. The black breath. The one that keeps the forest alive in winter." Amelie shivered. "That sounds like a legend." "Yeah," he said quietly. "That's what I told myself. Until last year, when my niece disappeared." He turned away before she could answer. "Just be careful after dark. If you hear it breathing close, don't listen back." That afternoon, the wind picked up. Snow began to fall again, light as ash. Amelie tried to distract herself by helping her mother in the kitchen, but Jean's hands trembled too much to slice the bread. She just stared at the window, muttering names under her breath. Emile, Rose, Sarah, Luke. Amelie caught her wrist. "Stop it. Please." Her mother blinked as though waking. "If I say their names, the silence knows where to find them. It's the only way to keep it from taking more. That's insane, Amelie whispered. But she couldn't shake the thought, Luke's name among them. As night fell, Jean lit candles instead of using the lamps. She said the electric light disturbed the air. The house filled with flickering shadows, stretching across the walls like long fingers. At exactly 12:03 again, it came. The breath. Long. Deep. The sound rippled through the house. Every candle flame shivered. Amelie felt it pressing against her chest, forcing her own lungs to match its rhythm. The silence between breaths was worse, dense, expectant. Then, faintly, she heard a voice. Her brother's. Amelie. The sound was distant but clear, like he was standing just beyond the window pane. She turned, every muscle rigid. Luke. Her mother's rosary slipped from her hands, beads scattering across the floor. The whisper came again, closer now. Amelie. Come outside. Her breath fogged the glass. Outside, the snow shimmered faintly under the moonlight. The forest edge waited, still and open, like a mouth. She took a step forward before she realized she was moving. Jean's voice broke the trance. Don't go. It's not him. But the whisper came again, soft and trembling with familiar warmth. You left me here, Aimee. Come see. Her heart cracked open. Without another word, Amelie opened the door. The wind hit her like ice. The forest was silent, until it wasn't. The breath came again, deeper this time, rattling the trees. Snow drifted from the branches like dust shaken from lungs. Somewhere in the dark, a figure moved, small, barefoot, skin blue-white in the moonlight. Luke. Or something that wore his face. He smiled. His lips were cracked with frost. I can show you what's underneath, he whispered. Then he reached out his hand. And the silence exhaled. The world seemed to fold in on itself as Amelie stared at the apparition before her. The snow glowed faintly, reflecting the cold gleam of the moon, and in that light Luke's face looked too smooth, too pale, as if it had been carved from ice. Luke, she whispered. Is it really you? He tilted his head, and the movement was wrong, too fluid, boneless, like water shifting in a vessel. His eyes were black pools, reflecting nothing. You never came back, he said softly. You promised. A pang of guilt tore through her. She remembered the night he vanished, the argument, the slammed door, her last words echoing through the hall. Then go, Luke. Go into your forest if you love it so much. And he had gone. She took a step toward him, snow crunching beneath her boots. The forest behind him moved as if breathing with him, each inhale pulling the trees closer, each exhale pushing them apart. Luke, she murmured, you need to come inside. You're freezing. His smile widened, splitting the corners of his mouth. Frost flaked from his lips. You still don't understand. It's not cold here. Not where the silence lives. Behind him, something shifted. The trees swayed though no wind touched them. The air thickened, and Amelie felt the faint suction of breath drawing inward from every direction. Her instinct screamed. She stepped back, but the snow beneath her seemed to sink, pulling at her boots like it wanted to swallow her whole. Luke, please, he raised a hand, palm out. Listen. Then the world went still. Not silent, still. As if the sound itself had been removed from existence. Her heartbeat faded. The wind vanished. She could no longer hear her own breathing. Only the forest's. It inhaled, deep and slow. And in that breath, she heard hundreds of tiny voices whispering beneath it, children murmuring names, prayers, cries. Her ears rang with it, a chorus of sorrow hidden inside the stillness. When the exhale came, her vision blurred, and she realized the breath wasn't just sound, it carried something with it. A faint mist, pale and shimmering, that rolled across the snow and slid through her clothes like water. She gasped, stumbling backward, but the mist clung to her skin, cold and heavy. She heard Luke's voice again, softer now. "Once you breathe it in, it knows you." Her mother's scream shattered the spell. "Amelie!" Jean was on the porch, waving frantically. Amelie turned back toward her brother, but he was gone. Only the trees remained, swaying gently. She ran. The snow seemed to pull at her legs, heavy and resistant, but she forced herself forward until she stumbled through the doorway. Jean slammed it shut and locked it, pressing her back against the wood. "What were you thinking?" Her mother cried. "He was there. Luke, he was standing right there." Jean shook her head violently. "That thing isn't your brother. It wears his face because it remembers what you love." Amelie's chest burned. "You knew, didn't you? You knew what happened to him all these years." Her mother's face crumpled. "I tried to forget. We all did. That's how it stays quiet. We pretend." Amelie grabbed her shoulders. "Pretend what?" "That the silence is mercy," Jean whispered. "That if we give it enough, it will leave us be." The words chilled Amelie to the bone. "You mean you gave it something?" Her mother didn't answer, but her eyes flicked toward the fireplace. Amelie followed her gaze, and saw the wooden box on the mantel. It had always been there, carved from black cedar, its lid sealed with wax. Luke had made it the summer before he vanished. Amelie stepped toward it. "What's in the box, Maman?" "Don't," Jean breathed. But Amelie lifted it anyway. The box was lighter than she expected. She peeled away the wax and opened it. Inside, wrapped in faded cloth, lay a small wooden carving, a child's figure with hollow eyes and no mouth. Amelie froze. "What is this?" Her mother was trembling. "It's what they called les offers du souffle. The offerings. Every family had one. A promise to the forest. To keep it sleeping." Amelie stared at her. "You mean this was some kind of ritual?" Her mother nodded slowly. When the silence started breathing again, it meant someone broke the promise. A chill ran through the room, dimming the firelight. The candles flickered violently, their flames bending toward the window. Then came the breath again, louder, heavier, as though it was just outside the door. Jean clutched the rosary. "It's awake." The walls creaked, the glass trembled in its frame. Amelie could hear it breathing through the house. Every window, every crack in the wall exhaled frost. The air temperature dropped so sharply her breath came out in white clouds. From the hallway came the sound of footsteps, bare, light, uneven. Amelie turned slowly toward the sound. "Maman, someone's inside." Jean's hand shook. "Don't move. Don't speak." But the steps grew louder, closer, until a small shadow appeared in the doorway. It was Emile. His eyes were black and empty, his face expressionless. Ice crusted the corners of his mouth. "Emile," Amelie whispered. He tilted his head, just like Luke had. "We can't sleep," he said in a voice that didn't belong to him. "It keeps us breathing." Behind him, more shapes emerged, children, pale and silent, filling the hallway like fog. Their mouths began to move together, forming words she couldn't hear. The sound came only when the silence breathed in, each inhale carrying their whispers, each exhale erasing them again. Jean began to pray, her voice shaking. "Hail Mary, full of grace," a sudden gust extinguished every candle. Darkness swallowed the room whole. Amelie reached for her mother, but Jean's hand slipped from hers. Then, in the dark, the breathing filled every corner, slow, deliberate, almost tender. It pressed against their skin, curling through their hair. Something brushed Amelie's cheek. A fingertip. Cold as glass. She flinched and turned, but there was no one there. Only the faint sound of children laughing, far away and underwater. And then came Luke's voice again, right behind her ear. "Do you remember what you promised me, Ame?" She spun, but her hand met only air. Her heart thundered. "What promise?" He whispered, "That you'd never let me disappear." The next thing she knew, the fire was out, and gray light leaked through the curtains. Her mother was asleep in the chair, clutching the rosary. The wooden box lay open on the floor, the little carving gone. Amelie's hands were trembling. Her reflection in the window looked older somehow, hollow-eyed. Outside, the forest stood still, a white ocean of frost. But in the snow, beneath the fence, something had been written, tiny, deliberate letters carved into the crust, "We are not gone." The letters trailed off toward the trees, where the footprints began again. Amelie turned away, shaking, but as she did, she caught her reflection moving a fraction slower than she did. It smiled faintly, her own face, but wrong. And for the briefest moment, as the silence inhaled again, she thought she saw her reflection whisper something soundless, "Breathe with us." The sun never truly rose over St. Aurelie that morning, it only managed to turn the darkness a lighter shade of gray. Amelie brewed coffee she couldn't taste, her thoughts drifting like ash. Her mother still slept, head bowed, rosary tangled between her fingers. The house was too still, the kind of stillness that listened. She couldn't stay here any longer. She pulled on her coat, grabbed the car keys, and stepped outside. The air bit hard, colder than before, and the world seemed muted, no wind, no birds, only that waiting hush. When she started the car, the engine coughed once and died. Again. Silence swallowed the sound like it had never existed. Then she heard it. A faint echo rising from the forest's edge, the first deep inhale. She froze. The trees shuddered as if sighing awake. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but something else tugged at her, pulling her toward the woods. Toward the footprints she'd seen the day before. She followed them, snow crunching underfoot. The forest loomed closer with each step, and soon the houses of St. Aurelie were gone, swallowed by the mist. The moment she crossed beneath the birches, the air changed. It thickened. The sound of her steps seemed distant, delayed, as though the forest were remembering them rather than hearing them in real time. She stopped. Ahead lay a clearing she didn't recognize. The snow here was perfect, untouched, except for a single ring of prints circling the center. Inside the ring stood something half buried in frost. A wooden effigy. It was shaped like a person, tall, faceless, carved from birch, its arms stretched upward like it was reaching to the sky. Black streaks ran down from its head, frozen sap or something darker. At its base lay dozens of smaller carvings, like the one from her mother's box, arranged neatly in a spiral. Amelie knelt, brushing snow away from one. Her breath caught. It bore her brother's name. Luke. Her stomach turned. The effigy was surrounded by them, tiny names carved in the wood, offerings left by every family in St. Aurelie. Some were so old the letters had faded away completely. The air trembled. Then the breathing began again, louder now, closer. The ground pulsed gently beneath her knees. She backed away. "No, no, not again," a whisper threaded through the exhale. "Stay." The snow rippled as if disturbed from below. Cracks opened around the effigy. From them seeped that same pale mist, curling upward in tendrils. Shapes moved inside it, faces, children's faces, faint and distorted, eyes wide and mouths forming words she couldn't hear. Amelie stumbled back, tripping over a root. The mist swirled toward her, and with it came the voices, layered, pleading. "We can't sleep. It hurts. Breathe for us." Her lungs burned. She couldn't tell if she was still breathing or if the forest was breathing through her. Then she heard Luke again. "It's not trying to hurt us, Ame. It's keeping us alive. Alive? She gasped. You're dead. He appeared through the fog, barefoot and thin, his skin the color of old ice. Not dead. Not alive. Just waiting. We feed it so it doesn't wake hungry. She shook her head violently. This is madness. Luke's face softened, almost human for a moment. If you leave now, it will follow. You carry its breath inside you. Her knees gave out. I didn't ask for this, you came back, he said simply. You remembered me. That's how it finds you. The mist coiled around her legs, pulling her down, whispering her name over and over. She clawed at the snow, gasping for air. Then, through the haze, a voice cut through, a deep, steady voice calling her name. Amelie. Paul trembly burst into the clearing, rifle in hand. He fired into the mist, the sound cracking the air. The echoes seemed to shatter the forest's rhythm, just for a heartbeat. He grabbed her arm, yanking her up. We have to move. They stumbled back through the trees. The mist recoiled, writhing like wounded smoke. When they finally burst out into the open field behind her mother's house, Paul didn't stop. Inside, now. Jean was at the door, eyes wild. You went into the woods, didn't you? Amelie collapsed onto the floor, coughing, gasping. Her skin felt icy, her breath visible even in the warmth. Paul slammed the door behind them. It's spreading. I saw the snow moving, it's like it's breathing through the roots. Jean's hands shook. You shouldn't have gone there. Now it knows your name. Amelie lifted her head weakly. It already did. Paul knelt beside her. You inhaled it, didn't you? She didn't answer. She could still feel it inside her lungs, a slow rhythm, not her own. He swore under his breath. If it marks you, it doesn't stop. You start hearing them, then seeing them, then what? He hesitated. Then you stop needing air. A noise rose outside, soft at first, then multiplying. Children's voices, dozens of them, chanting something too faint to understand. The sound wrapped around the house like a lullaby. Jean began to cry. They're calling for her. It's chosen Amelie. Paul grabbed his rifle again. No one's taking her. Not this time. He opened the curtains a fraction. Outside, the snow was moving, rippling in concentric waves, each pulse timed with the breath of something immense beneath it. At the edge of the yard stood the children. They weren't solid anymore, translucent, flickering, their mouths moving silently. Then, in perfect unison, they inhaled. The wind slammed against the house so hard the windows cracked. Jean screamed. Paul raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the air in the room thickened like fog. Amelie's lungs seized. She couldn't breathe. Her body convulsed as the invisible weight pressed down on her chest. She heard the rhythm again, the inhale, the exhale, and felt herself sinking to it against her will. Paul shouted something distant, muffled, like underwater. The walls groaned. Frost crawled across the ceiling. And through it all, Luke's voice whispered in her mind, just breathe. Let it take you. It's the only way to make it stop. Her mother clutched her hand, weeping. Don't listen to him, Amelie. It's not Luke anymore. But Amelie's vision was blurring. Each inhale from the silence drew the warmth out of her, and each exhale filled her with something heavy and ancient. Her heartbeat slowed. Somewhere far away, she heard Paul firing again, the sound splintering the darkness. The last thing she saw before collapsing was her mother's face, twisted in horror, as the frost crept over her lips. Then everything went black. When she woke, it was quiet again. Too quiet. The house was empty. The air smelled of burnt wood and snow. Paul's rifle lay near the door, broken in half. Her mother's rosary hung from the back of a chair, beads frozen mid-drop, as if time had stopped. "Hello?" Amelie whispered. Her voice echoed strangely, dull and distant. No answer. She stood, unsteady, and saw her reflection in the window once more. Only this time, it didn't mirror her. It smiled. And as the silence exhaled again, her reflection mouthed the words she was too afraid to say aloud: "Welcome home." The lights inside the community hall went out at once, plunging the building into a suffocating black. Screams filled the dark, echoing off the wooden walls. Someone fumbled for a phone light, but the glow barely reached an arm's length before it dimmed, swallowed by an unseen mist that had slipped inside with them. Evelyn clutched Clara's arm. "Stay close," she whispered. But her own voice felt wrong, hollow, like the sound came from the wrong place, the wrong throat. A faint hum started, deep and wet, vibrating through the floorboards. The same hum that had filled Evelyn's nightmares. The air turned thick with the smell of moss, soil, and decay. Then, a shape appeared near the back wall. Small, childlike, and still. Its outline was wrong, its arms too long, its head tilted too far. When the light from someone's trembling phone flickered across its face, the crowd froze. The thing wore a child's parka, red and muddy. But the face inside wasn't human. It looked as if skin had been stretched over fog, forming something that tried to resemble a smile. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were hollow dents that wept black condensation. Clara whispered, "It's Tommy." But Evelyn shook her head. She could feel it, the way the silence around them breathed in time with the creature's slow movements. "That's not him," she said. "It's what's left when the silence finishes feeding." The humming grew louder. The walls began to sweat. Drops of moisture ran down the wood and gathered into dark puddles. Then, the children began to come. One by one, more small figures stepped out of the shadows, some barefoot, some still wearing the clothes they'd vanished in. There were 7 of them now, each one twitching slightly, like puppets struggling against invisible strings. Evelyn realized that every time someone screamed, the children twitched faster. Their heads snapped toward the sound. Their chests rose, as if inhaling the fear. The silence was alive, and it fed through sound. "Don't speak," she whispered, clutching Clara tighter. "Don't make a sound." But the command came too late. A man near the door let out a desperate cry for help. The nearest child blurred forward, impossibly fast, and pressed its pale hand over his mouth. There was a hiss, like air escaping from a cracked pipe, and his body went limp. When the child pulled its hand away, the man's face was gone, smooth and empty, like clay before features were carved into it. Panic tore through the survivors. Evelyn grabbed Clara's hand and pulled her toward the small window behind the stage. Outside, the mist writhed like a living ocean, whispering, "Breathe for me." They smashed the window with a chair leg and climbed out into the freezing air. The fog wrapped around them, damp and suffocating. "Where can we go?" Clara rasped, her breath visible in the cold. "To the lake," Evelyn said. "It started there. Maybe it ends there too." They ran through the forest, branches tearing at their coats. Behind them, the whispers followed, crawling through the trees, hundreds of voices speaking as one. When they reached the frozen lake, the moon was a white wound above the ice. The mist hovered over it like a skin, pulsing faintly. Evelyn could see faint shadows moving beneath the surface, shapes that looked like children, swimming slowly upward. Clara stepped closer. "They're trapped," she said softly. "Maybe they're still alive under there." Evelyn didn't answer. Her breath came in ragged clouds as she knelt by the shore. The air around her seemed to hold its own heartbeat. Then, she heard her name. "Evelyn." It was her brother's voice. It came from beneath the ice. She looked down. A small, pale face stared up at her through the frozen surface, her brother, Samuel, exactly as he'd looked the night he vanished in the storm 15 years ago. "Help us," the voice said, muffled by the barrier of frost. "Let us breathe again." Her mind fractured between terror and longing. "Sam, break the silence," he whispered. "Let it breathe." Evelyn pressed her hand to the ice, feeling the cold seep into her bones. The surface throbbed under her palm, like a living pulse. The mist around them thickened, swirling into shapes, children's faces, open mouths, silent screams. Clara grabbed her shoulder. "Don't listen. It's not him, it's what took him." Evelyn's voice trembled. "Then what happens if we don't?" The mist began to close in, whispering louder. "Born from fear that is not spoken." Suddenly, the ice cracked beneath them. A fissure ran across the lake, splitting wide with a sound like thunder. From the gap, a column of dark water rose, twisting and writhing, filled with faces that flickered in and out of existence. The breathing silence had awakened. It towered above them, shapeless yet human, every missing child's voice woven into a single, gasping breath. The air itself seemed to pulse with its heartbeat. Evelyn fell to her knees, tears freezing on her face. "What do you want from us?" she whispered. The entity's voice came not from its mouth, but from the fog itself, vibrating through the bones of the world. To be remembered, to be feared, to live where silence grows. Clara screamed as one of the watery arms lashed out and wrapped around her waist, dragging her toward the crack. Evelyn lunged, grabbing her coat, pulling with all her strength. "Evelyn, let go." Clara gasped. "If it takes both of us, it'll never stop." Evelyn's fingers slipped. The silence roared, 1,000 voices gasping as Clara vanished beneath the ice. For a moment, the mist held still. Then it began to fade, dissolving into the night air. The hum stopped. The world grew quiet, too quiet. Evelyn stood alone on the frozen lake, her reflection fractured in the broken surface. The moonlight shimmered on the melting cracks, forming shapes like faces, watching her. In the distance, the first light of dawn crept over the trees. But it brought no warmth, no sound of birds. The forest seemed to be holding its breath. Evelyn walked back toward Black Hollow, every step echoing in the heavy quiet. When she reached the edge of the road, she saw the school bus, half buried in snow, doors open. The faint sound of children laughing drifted from inside. She turned toward it slowly. The laughter stopped. And then, in that deep, frozen stillness, the silence exhaled, soft, almost grateful. A new whisper curled through the air. Born from the fear that is not spoken. Evelyn looked up at the gray morning sky and realized the truth too late. The silence was breathing through her now. Her eyes glazed over, her lips parted, and a thin cloud of mist escaped her mouth. Somewhere beneath the lake, something stirred. And the sound of a single, trembling breath echoed through the pines.